Welcome back to another UNC basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that is called Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting and analyst, longtime college, AAU, and high school coach, Mr. David Sisk. And David, big-time news for Hubert Davis and his basketball program. Man, the positives just keep rolling in for this program. Gigi Jackson, the number one player in the nation in the class of 2023, 6'9", 200 pounds, out of Ridgeview High School in Columbia, South Carolina, has committed to play basketball for the Tar Heels, picking Carolina over Duke, also South Carolina, and kind of dangling some thoughts of the G League also in the mix there. But he is going to be a Tar Heel. He joined Simeon Wilcher, another top 10 kid from the class of 2023 in North Carolina's recruiting hall for that year. So your thoughts on Gigi Jackson becoming a Tar Heel?
Well, and it also got interesting late because he had offers down the home stretch from UMass once Frank Martin went there, and then in the last couple of days had one from Oregon. So I still wonder what the reasoning was for some of these schools getting in. I could understand UMass and Frank Martin and the relationship there with the families, but why some of the others, maybe they thought that maybe he hadn't had his mind made up because he was putting it off. And it's been something North Carolina fans have been waiting on here for the last few weeks, from the time that his high school season was over until now. And this thing's drawn out for a while. We really couldn't get a time that he was going to announce because I don't think that they knew either. They were trying to make decisions within that family, within that inner circle. But North Carolina, to go back to your point, the hot program, and that's what you want. It's so much about branding now. North Carolina's always been, ever since I've been following college basketball, with a couple of droughts there, not much, has been the it program. And I go all the way back to watching them. I remember Phil Ford playing. So, that's how long we're going back, and especially you get up in the 80s, Jordan Perkins and Worthy, are still, that's still college basketball royalty. Maybe not the people in their 20s and 30s, but people my age and older, that's one of the first groups that you think about. And then you go on and think about all the teams, all the great players. When North Carolina really had that run of players in the 90s, from Rasheed Wallace to Stackhouse to Vince Carter. And then, as it looks like, obviously Roy Williams had a great run with 3 national titles. And now it seems like they're getting back to that. To come off a run when you get to the national championship game and then right in behind it, get the number one player. This is the first number one player in the Rivals era that North Carolina's got a commitment from. And that's been
number one from Rivals. Yeah.
For Rivals. So that's been going on since 2003, I think it was. Yeah. So obviously a very big announcement from North Carolina. And when you have the national title, you have Gigi's commitment, and then the run of announcements of players coming back, North Carolina is going to be, I would think, a preseason top 5 team next year. It's you have to say Hubert could not have hit the ground running any better than he has.
And for clarification, Harrison Barnes was number one in some services. And we actually have a piece coming out looking back at the different guys they brought in, going back to 1979, 78, when the recruiting rankings really started taking whole form. There are only a handful. There are not as many people would think that were number one overall in a respected service. So what kind of player is Gigi? There's been a lot of talk about, boy, Gigi could be this, Gigi could be that. Maybe he could defend some of the post. He's a true stretch 4. We've done pods about him before, and you talk a lot about how they were watching that stretch 4 spot. And this goes back to October when they're to practice and they're watching Brady Manick in practice. And I would imagine what they saw play out over the next 5 months, impressed them a lot and was part of this decision making. So what kind of player is he, and how do you see him fitting in when he eventually arrives?
Well, I kind of look at him, his athleticism, first of all, is absolutely off the charts. His length at 6'9". And that athleticism and playmaking ability that he has, he's not a back-to-the-bucket guy. He's not going to be one of those 6'9" guys that play the two. He doesn't stretch the floor with his three-point shot. He's not a prolific outside shooter, but he stretches the floor with his athleticism. He's able to pull a guy out and go by him. And then he has that athleticism on the other end where he can guard multiple spots. I think, and there's one thing, we go back, and this brings back the old argument. When you rank players, no matter what company you work for, when you rank players, are you ranking them because are they the best player now? Will they be the best player next year when they go to college? Or are they going to be the best player on down the road? Do they have the most upside and the most potential? And I think a lot of times that's what you do. Michael Jordan, Bob Gibbons could have retired after he ranked Michael Jordan number one over Patrick Ewing. He was the first person to do it. And I knew Bob well. We had a lot of talks back in the days about that. But that was his claim to fame. He ranked Michael Jordan over Patrick Ewing, and he never had to work again. And the thing was, there might have still been a lot of doubt even in college because Patrick Ewing was such a force. But there was no doubt about it once Michael Jordan won 6 titles with the Chicago Bulls and got through the NBA. So that's what you're kind of looking at. So Gigi, I think you look at what makes a great player, the best players in the NBA. I truly think it's those guys that are in that 6'9", 6'10", 6'11" range who can play out on the floor. And they don't have to be twos. I mean, they don't have to be 6'11" two guard making 3-pointers or something like that. You look at guys like Giannis, like LeBron, like Jokic, like that, who are bigger guys who can play make. Giannis can't really shoot it past 15 feet, but they have to wall the lane off against him. He's so good. You can't gap him enough. And he draws the defense. You put shooters around him. He kicks. LeBron's a freight train getting to the rim, no matter how you play him. So I think Gigi is going to kind of fit. I don't know how much he'll fit it going into college because his body's still got to mature. His game's got to mature. But that's what I see him on down the road, that he's just that type of player, a freakish athlete, 6'9", going to be a 6'9", 6'10" playmaker.
Well, and as a class of 23 kid, he's still got time before he arrives. So when you look at someone like him, do you see where maybe one day down the road, a year and a half, 4 years, whatever, he could actually become a pretty good perimeter shooter? Some guys takes a while. Some guys just never going to be that kind of guy. Do you see that as something that maybe he could end up doing, maybe not at the Brady Manick clip? Carolina fans need to disregard the fact that the next Brady Manick's coming on down the pike, because that's not going to happen very often. But as far as what Gigi can do, can you anticipate that he could shoot it well enough from 3 that he could give them a little bit of that element?
I've spoken to individuals who have watched him a ton of times who know more about basketball than I do, so you can kind of read between the lines on that one. And they think that it was best for him to wait to 2023 because, and even his dad said this, that he still was young and he had to grow up, mature. And the only way you do that's with age, not knocking his character or anything like that. He was a young kid. He had to mature, but his game had to mature also. And like I said, people that really understand basketball and know basketball and have watched him a lot say that there's not one part of his game that he's bad at anything. It's just, it's got to grow. It's got to grow. Yeah. It's got to grow. So that's kind of where he's at. So I feel like it's the same way with his shot, but he's not going to be a Brady Manick type.
No.
So people don't need to look for that. I've even wondered at his size with his athleticism if eventually he might even slide down and play the 5 and could be truly and then you're talking about a true stretch kind of team. If you have somebody at the 4 spot or somebody that's athletic can shoot the ball, let's say in 2 years you play him at the 5, you've got a Puff Johnson or you've got somebody else there at the 4 who can kind of stretch it out and shoot the ball, who can be athletic and get to the rim, Dontre Styles. So he might even be able to stretch on and do that, because in today's day and age, you don't have to have somebody back to the bucket. As much as we love Baycott and thank God, I think North Carolina fans will all agree with me. Thank God he's coming back. But, in today's day and age, you don't necessarily have to have that 6'10", 6'11" guy with a back to the bucket. You can really stretch it. You have stretch 4, stretch 5s.
But I think North Carolina fans saw April 4th in New Orleans. Inside the last minute of the game, you've got to have somebody that can body a David McCormick when the ball's dumped down.
I think you can do that just because your game might step. And here, you got to remember this: he can play with his back to the bucket. I mean, he is basically the same height as Armando Baycott. So don't forget that. He's not like he's 6'7". I mean, he's basically he's close to 6'10". He's
got long arms. He's got long arms. He's got length too.
He's got the length. He's not going to have the girth that Armando's going to have. But here's the thing: with that length and that athleticism, he's a different kind of guy inside, more the jumping jack type that can. What I'm saying is he could score inside, but he can also step out with his athleticism. But I think he can guard the post because he's so athletic and he's so long that I think he can step down and guard the 5 and not really have much of a problem.
This may be a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I want to get your straight out response. Is he an impact player? And I ask that because a lot of times guys are rated real high, but it takes a while before they really find themselves in the college game. When I say a while, I mean like January. Is he a guy that steps on the floor in November and you're like, yeah, that's the best player on the court, like a Banchero was? Or is he a guy that maybe grows into it and by January, mid-January, he really starts to take it off because he figures a few things out?
I believe the whole process here of going 2023 was that he could get that extra year to develop his game and be that type of player as a freshman. That's the hope, that he can do that. If you asked me that same question, if he'd have went 22, I would have said no. But he's got that extra year to do that. And, you see freshmen now just all over the place have huge years. And, especially the one and done type, top 5, top 10 players. And you've got to remember this, the guys who are ranked number 1 going into college, they usually don't fall far in a draft. You might see somebody might be a 1, might drop down about 5 or 6. They won't be any farther than that. So I expect when you watch him play, and if he is a 1-year guy at North Carolina and then goes on the NBA draft, I really don't see a scenario, barring something just catastrophic, that he drops below a 5th or 6th draft pick in the draft. And that's a floor right there. So I think you're definitely looking at a guy. Now, people don't need to expect that he's going to be, as a freshman, that you're the greatest player to ever put on a uniform at the University of North Carolina. But, he can have a major, major impact on the game.
They've had some damn good forwards as freshmen. Antoine Jamison was amazing. Tyler Hansbrough was amazing. That'll be interesting to see what he does. By the way, you threw it out there very quickly without getting into the roster composition on the current team coming back. I know there was a little thought to 2022. What can you tell people about that flirtation?
this close to it, I don't know. And let me tell you why I say that. I've told you what I knew about that he would be a better player in 23, that even people around him and the family kind of thought just the maturity of his game, just his personal maturity, that 23 would be better. I'm not sure yet, because as this thing drug out after the season, it seemed to be like 22 was not an option. And after I talked, like I said, after I talked to his father a couple times, I talked to people who had as good as gauge on a situation as anybody. His coach at Ridgeview, Eric Stoneman, got the Oak Hill job. And I kind of left those discussions in about, let's say, the first 3 weeks of March. Well, let's change that all the way to the end of March, where I was saying there's no way he goes 2022. But then that buzz started, and I was told, and I've said this on the boards, I've never said it publicly, that if he committed 2023, that the coaching staff felt like that, well, I shouldn't say that. Somebody said they felt like the coaching staff might be done with the 2023 class if they got Gigi and they got Simeon Wilcher. But then the first week of Orlando, they show up, and they're looking at several different players in the 23 class. They're looking at Matas Bazelis, and they're talking about some kids in the 23 class maybe visiting. And I was sitting there thinking, well, maybe, why would they look at these guys? Maybe that information wasn't correct. Maybe Gigi's looking at going 2022, and they want to, just in case he does, maybe they want to cover their bases and go back and start looking at some of these guys that they've offered and some new guys, because they were looking at Matas Bazelis as stretch 4. So they were kind of looking at guys at the same position. So, and it may be because they had so much success with Brady Manick, they're looking in the future and they're saying, hey, we got to have a guy like that.
Yeah.
So I don't really know yet. We're doing this podcast right on the heels of his commitment, but it'll come out, and that'll be one of the things, when I talk to them, that's going to be one of my first questions, how close were they to doing that?
That's going to be an interesting part of this story, for sure. David, fantastic stuff.
Let me say one thing too.
Yeah.
On that thing, because I asked somebody, if I said his name, everybody watching, I think everybody watching this would probably know him, and very respected. And I asked him, probably about 2 weeks ago or so, when it first started, you started hearing a buzz about 2022. And I asked him, and I said, is that a possibility? And he didn't think so either. He said, but you know something? If they return, all the players return. Caleb Love returns, Leakey returns, obviously Baycott returns. They could kind of play him. He could come in, and he said, and his word was, they could hide him. Sort of, and what they meant by that was he could just kind of come in and fit in that first year and not have the pressure of being a man. Because let's face it, if he came in next year, it's going to be Baycott's team. It's going to be Caleb Love and R.J. Davis's team. It's not going to be G.G. Jackson's team.
Yeah.
But in 23, it's going to be a lot more. He coming in at 23, he's going to take that role. So that's one thing too. He could come in 22 and have a totally different role on the team.
Well, Tony Bradley did that in 17, came off the bench. He didn't have the pressure of being the guy. He went first round. A lot of people thought Nasir Little should have started when he was a freshman. I didn't, but there are a lot of people that just figured, well, he's Nasir Little, he should start. Kobe was the hot freshman that year, but there really was no pressure on. The only pressure on Nasir was pressure he put on himself. that year, and he went first round, and he's in the league, and he's getting better, and looks like he's going to stick as well. So, Hubert knows through experiences at Carolina, you could come in and not have to be the guy and still go first round after 1 year. Marvin Williams did it as well. So you got Williams, Bradley, and Nasir Little right there, 3 examples as well. When Harrison Barnes, he played 2 years. He still would have gone lottery, I'm sure, after his first year, even though he struggled a little bit adapting, maybe a little more pressure on him at the time. But I think it's a great, if he did come in 22, that they definitely would be able to hide him and allow him to just kind of take his time and grow while also making the team better. That would have been an interesting thing to see. But he's 2023. He's still going to go in with a situation with our dudes, and he's going to go in with Simeon Wilcher. If you're only going to take 2 in the class, David, that's a pretty good 2 to take.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's a class right there, with those kind of players. Now, I've said this. I think Simeon Wilcher right now is ranked number 10 by Rivals. I think he's underrated. Man, he has just been sensational everywhere he's been. They won the overall state championship in New Jersey, and public and private. I can't tell you how big that is.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Roselle Catholic. That's huge. New Jersey, that high school basketball in that state's so big. But this past year, in the semifinals, they had to defeat Mackenzie McBacco and Nasir Cunningham.
Yeah.
McBacco just committed to Duke, is ranked number 2. I think it's number 2 by Rivals in the 23 class. And his teammate was Nasir Cunningham, who's ranked number 1 in 2024. So Roselle Catholic beat them, went on and coasted in championship game. Then they played the public champion, which is highly ranked nationally, Camden, New Jersey, who had, before they got beat earlier in the year, had I think it was like a 60, 70-something game winning streak. DJ Wagner, number 3 ranked player in 23, and Aaron Bradshaw, probably the best 7-footer in that class perhaps, and defeated them. And I would say that they were the underdog going in that game. And he was very impressive. Then he goes to Orlando and EYBL and just shows out in the first tournament of the spring. And, for the Naismith Awards, for their All-American team, they had 30 players. We talked about this before. They only had 5 juniors that they named for that. He was one of the 5. So Naismith thinks he's one of the best 5 juniors in the country. And Gigi definitely on that list. So, you could look at it before you're done and say North Carolina may have gotten 2 of the best 3, 4, 5 players in the country in 2023.
Very, very impressive indeed. He's David Sisk. I'm Andrew Jones. Gigi Jackson is going to be a Tar Heel, so I'm sure Carolina fans are absolutely excited. We appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with us for a while.